I remember when I first fell in love with Lisa. It felt like a fairy tale, a perfect union, built on trust, laughter, and shared dreams. I always believed in the idea of love being a sanctuary, a refuge where loyalty reigned supreme. Growing up, I was taught that a good woman stands by her man, that she cherishes the memories you create together, and that true love is unwavering. I had this vision of what my life would be: happiness until the end, with Lisa by my side. We shared so many beautiful moments, from our spontaneous road trips to quiet evenings on the couch, talking about everything and nothing. I was convinced that our bond was unbreakable. The thought of her being unfaithful never crossed my mind. My Lisa would never do that. She was everything I wanted, and I believed she felt the same about me. But then, life has a way of shaking up your belief bubble, doesn't it? I often thought about the type of man I wanted to be, the loyal partner who stood by his wife through thick and thin. I wanted to be the kind of husband who not only made her happy, but also brought her the stability and love she deserved. But as much as I wanted that, I never prepared for the worst. I didn't think my world would shatter, that my beliefs could be challenged so brutally. In those early days, I couldn't imagine that money could ever come between us. To me, our shared memories were priceless, far more valuable than any material wealth. But little did I know that my perception of love would soon be put to the ultimate test. As I sat there, reflecting on our life together, I felt a strange tension brewing. I thought about my friends who always warned me to be cautious, who shared stories of heartbreak and betrayal. I used to roll my eyes, thinking, that won't happen to me. I couldn't help but wonder if they were right. What if bad women existed? What if my perfect bubble was about to burst? I felt the first wave of fear wash over me, a nagging doubt that I couldn't quite shake. My heart whispered, something's wrong. But I didn't want to listen. I held on to my belief that Lisa was loyal, that she cherished our love as much as I did. That belief was my anchor, and I clung to it, refusing to let go even as the storm clouds gathered on the horizon. This is my story, one of shattered beliefs, unexpected truths, and the journey to find love again. It's a story that could belong to anyone, a reminder that life can change in an instant. I'm sharing this not just for me, but for anyone who has ever faced the terrifying reality that the ones we love can sometimes betray us in ways we never expected. In the weeks leading up to the storm, I started noticing small changes in Lisa's behavior. At first, I brushed them off, convincing myself they were just the usual ups and downs of life. But deep down, a nagging feeling began to creep in, one that I couldn't ignore forever. It started with her phone. Lisa was always the one to leave it lying around, but suddenly she became protective of it. I'd catch her quickly turning the screen away when I walked into the room, or hastily putting it in her bag whenever I was nearby. It seemed harmless enough. After all, we all deserve a little privacy, right? But my gut told me something was off. Then there were the late nights. I'd often wait up for her, hoping to share a moment at the end of the day, but more often than not, she'd come home later than usual. When I'd ask where she had been, she'd smile and say she lost track of time while out with friends. It wasn't uncommon for her to go out occasionally, but these late nights became a routine, a pattern that felt too rehearsed. I started to watch her more closely. There were subtle shifts in her demeanor, a slight hesitance in her laughter, a distant look in her eyes, as if she were somewhere else entirely. The affectionate touches we once shared felt less spontaneous, replaced with an awkward formality that stung more than I wanted to admit. It was as if a wall had been erected between us, and I was struggling to find a way to breach it. Then came the little lies. One night, she mentioned needing to run an errand after work. I offered to go with her, eager to spend any time I could. She waved me off with a casual smile, insisting it was just a quick trip. But the longer she was gone, the more my heart sank. I knew something wasn't adding up. I felt like I was living in a half-reality where shadows of doubt loomed larger with each passing day. I confided in my closest friends, seeking their input to validate my fears. They offered support, but also warned me to keep my eyes open. I didn't want to be the guy who accused his wife of cheating without evidence, so I pushed those thoughts aside. Still, the clues were there, dancing in front of me, teasing me with the possibility of betrayal. Every time I glanced at her, I felt a mixture of love and confusion. How could the woman I loved so deeply be hiding something from me? The belief bubble I had built around our relationship felt fragile, and I feared it was about to shatter. I wanted to confront her, to voice my concerns, but the thought paralyzed me. What if I was wrong? What if I was just being paranoid? As I mulled over these signs, I could feel the ground beneath me shifting. With each small clue, the life we had built together felt more like a mirage. I was trapped between the love I had for her and the growing dread that perhaps my instincts were right all along. One afternoon, I was out in the yard, tending to the garden, trying to push the unsettling feelings aside. As I dug my hands into the earth, I spotted Mrs. Thompson, our neighbor, walking her dog. She was an older woman with a kind smile, someone I often chatted with while we watered our lawns. Today, however, her expression was unusually serious as she approached me. "Jake," she said, her voice hesitant, "can we talk for a moment?" My heart raced. There was something in her tone that sent chills down my spine. I nodded, wiping my hands on my jeans, and motioned for her to come closer. "Sure, what's up?" She glanced around as if checking for anyone nearby, her brow furrowed with concern. "I don't want to upset you, but I think you need to know something. I saw Lisa the other day." My stomach dropped. "Oh? Where?" Mrs. Thompson hesitated, taking a deep breath. "She was with another man. They looked very close. I just thought you should be aware. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but it didn't seem right." I felt the world spin around me, the garden blurring, as the reality of her words crashed over me like a tidal wave. "What do you mean, very close?" I managed to ask, my voice shaky. She shifted uncomfortably, as if she regretted saying anything at all. They were at the coffee shop down the street. She was laughing and leaning in towards him. "I know how much you love her, Jake, and I just thought you should know." I could barely process her words. The very foundation of my world felt like it was crumbling beneath me. I nodded numbly, forcing a smile despite the storm of emotions brewing inside me. "Thank you for telling me, Mrs. Thompson. I appreciate it." As she walked away, I stood frozen, staring at the garden that suddenly felt like a prison. My mind raced, replaying the images of Lisa's laughter and the late nights, the distant looks, the phone she guarded like a secret treasure. Each memory felt tainted now, twisted by the revelation that loomed over me. I wanted to dismiss her words as mere gossip, but something deep inside me knew that I couldn't ignore this. The nagging doubts that had plagued me for weeks were now amplified, and I could feel the walls of my belief bubble closing in around me, suffocating my hopes for our future. In that moment, I was faced with an agonizing truth. The life I had built with Lisa might not be what I thought. I felt betrayed, heartbroken, and utterly lost. The fear of losing her surged through me, but along with that fear came a flicker of anger. How could she do this to us? To me? I took a deep breath, forcing myself to steady my racing heart. I knew I needed answers, and the thought of confronting her filled me with dread. But I also knew that the time had come to face the reality I had been avoiding for far too long. The comfortable life I once cherished now felt like a fragile facade, ready to crumble at any moment. After my conversation with Mrs. Thompson, I felt like I was living in a fog. Every time I looked at Lisa, my heart raced with confusion and fear. But I couldn't bring myself to voice my concerns. Instead, I buried myself in denial, telling myself that surely Mrs. Thompson had misinterpreted what she saw. After all, Lisa was my wife, my partner. She wouldn't betray me like that, would she? I forced myself to act normal, putting on a brave face. "Hey, babe," I'd call out cheerfully whenever I heard her come home. I tried to ignore the sinking feeling in my stomach when I saw her enter the house with a hint of mystery surrounding her. Each smile she offered felt like a dagger in my heart, a reminder of the chasm opening between us. I began rationalizing everything. Maybe she was just being friendly with someone at work. Perhaps they were discussing a project. I clung to those thoughts like a lifeline, desperate to maintain the illusion of our perfect life. I couldn't let my mind wander to darker places. It felt easier to believe that this was just a rough patch, a phase we could work through. At dinner, I asked about her day, and Lisa spoke animatedly about her co-workers, but I noticed something odd. There was a spark in her eyes when she mentioned one guy in particular, someone I hadn't heard of before. A tightness gripped my chest as she laughed at a joke he told her. The laughter echoed in my ears, piercing through my denial. Still, I pushed it away. "You're imagining things, Jake," I whispered to myself in the mirror, trying to convince my reflection that everything was fine. "Lisa loves you. She would never cheat." But deep down, the doubts lingered like shadows, refusing to be banished. I tried distracting myself, working late, throwing myself into hobbies, but every moment of solitude felt heavy with uncertainty. The familiar ache of my heart began to morph into something darker, an unsettling mix of anger and hurt. I found myself standing at the window one night, staring out into the darkness. My mind raced with images of Lisa laughing with someone else, sharing moments that should have been ours. It felt like a betrayal I couldn't comprehend. The woman I loved, the woman I thought I knew, was slipping away from me, and I was powerless to stop it. I felt embarrassed to confide in my friends again, fearing they'd think I was paranoid or overreacting. How could I possibly tell them that I feared my wife was being unfaithful? The very idea felt absurd, but the whispers in my mind grew louder. I decided to confront Lisa, but each time I opened my mouth, words failed me. The fear of losing her paralyzed me, and instead of speaking my truth, I buried the suspicion deeper. Denial became my shield, a fragile barrier against the pain that loomed just beyond. As I lay awake at night, staring at the ceiling, I realized I was clinging to a fantasy that was quickly unraveling. In that quiet darkness, the truth began to emerge, but I fought against it. I refused to accept what was becoming increasingly clear, that my world might not be what I believed it to be. As the days turned into weeks, my internal conflict grew more intense. The nagging doubts that had initially whispered in my mind became a deafening roar, drowning out any semblance of clarity. I found myself caught in a whirlwind of emotions, swinging between anger, sadness, and confusion. My heart ached with the fear of betrayal, but I couldn't shake the desperate hope that I was wrong. Every time I saw Lisa, I couldn't help but wonder if I was enough for her. Had I failed as a husband? The thought of losing her felt like a physical blow, a punch to my gut that left me breathless. I replayed our past, searching for signs that I had missed, and I found myself dissecting every moment we shared. Had I taken her for granted? Had I not given her the attention she deserved? My self-esteem began to crumble. I used to be confident in who I was, but now I felt small and inadequate. The man who had once been secure in his love now grappled with the crippling belief that he wasn't worthy of Lisa's affection. I could feel the weight of her laughter fading away, replaced by an overwhelming sense of loneliness. I started to question everything. I couldn't help but look in the mirror and ask, "What's wrong with me?" I imagined Lisa with another man, someone who could offer her more than I ever could. The thought consumed me. Did I lack ambition? Was my love not enough? Each question felt like a blade, cutting deeper into my self-worth. Conversations with friends became stilted and awkward. I would smile and laugh along, but inside, I was crumbling. How could I admit my fears when I didn't even know if they were valid? The fear of judgment kept me silent. Instead, I faked confidence, putting on a brave face while the storm raged within. One night, after another long day filled with doubt, I found myself scrolling through social media, aimlessly clicking through pictures of friends and their seemingly perfect lives. Couples sharing vacations, laughing children, friends celebrating milestones. It felt like a slap in the face. I was surrounded by love, and yet I felt utterly alone. The jealousy that bubbled within me was unfamiliar and unwelcome, a bitter reminder of what I stood to lose. Then, in a moment of desperation, I turned to my old hobbies, things that once brought me joy, hoping to reclaim a piece of myself. But even that felt hollow. I would pick up my guitar and strum absent-mindedly, the melodies feeling foreign and distant. I couldn't escape the thoughts that haunted me, like ghosts from my past, reminding me of the love I feared I was losing. I sat on the couch one evening, watching Lisa laugh at something on her phone, and it struck me like a lightning bolt. I was afraid. Afraid of what she might be doing. Afraid of the truth I was too scared to face. It was easier to deny the reality than to confront the potential loss. The more I felt my self-esteem slip, the harder it became to trust her or myself. In those moments of solitude, as the tears blurred my vision, I realized that my heart was in a tug-of-war. I loved her fiercely, yet I was haunted by the uncertainty of her loyalty. I needed to confront her and face the truth, but the thought terrified me. What if my fears were justified? What if my heart was right all along? I was caught in a labyrinth of emotions, and every twist and turn led me deeper into despair. The day I finally decided to confront Lisa was like a storm brewing on the horizon, dark and ominous. I had spent the morning pacing the house, rehearsing the words I wanted to say. My heart raced with anticipation and dread, the fear of the unknown consuming me. Would she deny it? Would she lash out? Or would she break down and confess? When Lisa came home that evening, I noticed the cheerful tone in her voice as she greeted me. But all I could focus on was the knot tightening in my stomach. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing heart, and called her into the living room. "Lisa, can we talk?" I asked, trying to sound calm, but the tremor in my voice betrayed me. "Of course, Jake. What's on your mind?" she replied, her brow furrowing slightly with concern. I gestured for her to sit down, my palms sweating as I searched for the right words. "I've been feeling unsettled lately. I've heard some things, and I just need to know the truth." Her eyes widened, and for a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of something. Fear, guilt, but it disappeared almost as quickly as it came. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice steady but with a hint of defensiveness. I hesitated, feeling the weight of my thoughts pressing down on me. "I spoke with Mrs. Thompson the other day. She told me she saw you with another man." The words felt heavy, like stones dropping into the silence between us. Lisa's expression shifted, and I watched as she struggled to maintain her composure. "What? That's ridiculous, Jake. You know how Mrs. Thompson can be. She's always jumping to conclusions," she protested, her voice rising slightly. "Please, Lisa," I pleaded, desperation creeping into my tone. "I need you to be honest with me. I can't keep living in this limbo. If there's something going on, I deserve to know." For a moment, her eyes flickered with something that looked like pain, but it was gone in an instant. "I don't know what she thinks she saw, but you have to trust me. I love you. There's nothing going on. You're the only one for me." I felt a mix of relief and frustration. Her words were like a balm to my wounds, but they also ignited the doubts I couldn't shake. "But how can I trust you? I see the way you act around other guys. You've been distant, and I can't help but wonder if I'm losing you." "Jake, you're being paranoid," she exclaimed, her voice rising in defense. "I've been busy with work, that's all. You know how demanding my job can be." I clenched my fists, feeling the frustration boil within me. "This isn't just about your job. It's about us. I feel like I'm losing you, and I don't know why. I need you to be honest with me, Lisa. Are you seeing someone else?" Her silence spoke volumes, and I felt the air thicken between us. I watched as her eyes darted away, avoiding my gaze, and in that moment, I knew that my worst fears were coming true. "Lisa, please just tell me the truth. I can handle it. I just need to know." Finally, she looked at me, her expression a mixture of sorrow and defiance. "I'm not cheating on you, Jake. You have to believe me." But as I searched her eyes, I felt a deep-seated doubt. I wanted to believe her, but the memories of Mrs. Thompson's words haunted me. The weight of uncertainty settled heavily on my shoulders, and I realized that even if she wasn't with another man, something was undeniably wrong. "I want to believe you," I said, my voice softer now, "but I need to know what's going on in your heart. This distance between us, it's tearing me apart." Lisa's face softened, and for a moment, I thought I saw a glimmer of remorse. But before I could grasp onto that feeling, she turned away, the barrier between us growing thicker. The confrontation had laid bare my fears, but it had also revealed the chasm that had opened between us. As I watched her retreat, my heart sank further. I had hoped that this conversation would bring clarity, but instead, I felt more lost than ever, trapped in a reality where the truth remained just out of reach. After that confrontation, everything changed. The air in our home felt thick with unspoken words and unresolved tension. I went through the motions of daily life, work, dinner, the occasional half-hearted conversation with Lisa, but inside, I was a storm of emotions. The very essence of my world felt fragile, as if it could shatter at any moment. I'd lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, my heart heavy with a sense of loss that I couldn't quite put into words. The laughter we once shared echoed in my mind like a haunting melody, reminding me of what we had and what was slipping away. Each day felt like an emotional roller coaster. I would wake up hoping for a glimpse of the loving wife I once knew, only to be met with the cold reality of her distance. I felt like I was watching a stranger navigate my life, and it filled me with a deep sense of sadness. When I saw her lost in thought, a shadow crossing her face, I yearned to reach out and pull her back to me. But every time I tried, I felt a wall between us that only grew thicker. The emotional turmoil became unbearable. My mind raced with worst-case scenarios. What if Lisa had already found someone else? What if she was planning her escape? Each thought felt like a dagger piercing through the remnants of my self-esteem. I questioned every moment we'd shared, wondering if I had been blind to the signs all along. Had she already checked out of our marriage? I found myself recalling moments that once brought me joy, now tinged with sorrow. Our anniversary dinner, once filled with laughter and love, felt tainted by doubt. Every touch felt electric, yet it was a reminder that those sparks had grown dim. I wanted to scream, to lash out, but all I could do was sit in silence, drowning in a sea of heartbreak. I tried to put on a brave face, but it became increasingly difficult. Friends reached out, inviting me out for drinks or to watch a game, but I found myself declining. I couldn't bear to pretend that everything was okay when it felt like my world was crumbling. Instead, I withdrew, retreating into the safety of solitude, which only deepened my feelings of loneliness. One evening, I sat on the couch, flicking through old photo albums. The images seemed to mock me, smiling faces frozen in time, memories of laughter and love. With each page I turned, the weight of my heartbreak grew heavier. Tears streamed down my face as I remembered our wedding day, the promises we made to each other, the future we envisioned together. It all felt like a distant dream now. The emotional turmoil reached a breaking point. I felt trapped in a cycle of despair, with no way out. I longed for a release, a way to express the whirlwind of feelings swirling inside me. So I took to writing, pouring my heart onto the pages. It became a cathartic outlet, a way to make sense of the chaos within. I wrote letters to Lisa that I never sent, expressing my fears, my love, my confusion. Each word felt like a small step toward understanding my heartbreak. But still, I felt lost. The chasm between us was undeniable, and the love I had fought so hard to hold on to now felt like a painful reminder of what I was losing. As the days turned into weeks, I realized that the emotional turmoil had transformed into a profound sadness that weighed heavily on my heart. I didn't know how to move forward, and the uncertainty of our future loomed large. In those quiet moments of despair, I knew that I needed to find a way to either fight for our love or start healing from the heartbreak that threatened to consume me whole. But as I sat in that stillness, I felt the ache of my loneliness more acutely than ever, unsure of which path I should take. As I wrestled with the weight of my decision, I knew I couldn't do it alone. I had spent too many nights locked in my thoughts, grappling with feelings of isolation and despair. It was time to reach out to the people in my life who cared for me. While I had initially tried to keep my struggles private, I realized that sharing my pain might be the first step toward healing. I reached out to my old friend, Mark, who had always been a sounding board for my thoughts. We had known each other since college, and he had always been someone I could trust. We arranged to meet at our favorite diner, a cozy spot that held countless memories of late-night conversations and laughter. As I sat across from him, the familiar scent of coffee and pancakes filled the air, grounding me amid the chaos in my mind. "I don't know where to start," I admitted, feeling a lump in my throat. But once I began, the words poured out like a dam that had finally broken. I shared everything: the confrontation with Lisa, the hurt, and my internal battle of whether to stay or leave. Mark listened intently, his brow furrowed in concentration. As I wrestled with the weight of my decision, I knew I couldn't do it alone. I had spent too many nights locked in my thoughts, grappling with feelings of isolation and despair. It was time to reach out to the people in my life who cared for me. While I had initially tried to keep my struggles private, I realized that sharing my pain might be the first step toward healing. I reached out to my old friend, Mark, who had always been a sounding board for my thoughts. We had known each other since college, and he had always been someone I could trust. We arranged to meet at our favorite diner, a cozy spot that held countless memories of late-night conversations and laughter. As I sat across from him, the familiar scent of coffee and pancakes filled the air, grounding me amid the chaos in my mind. "I don't know where to start," I admitted, feeling a lump in my throat. But once I began, the words poured out like a dam that had finally broken. I shared everything: the confrontation with Lisa, the hurt, and my internal battle of whether to stay or leave. Mark listened intently, his brow furrowed in concentration. "You know," he finally said, "it's okay to feel lost. It's a huge change, and it's natural to seek clarity. But you have to think about what's best for you, not just for Lisa." His words resonated deeply. I hadn't been considering my own well-being enough amidst all the turmoil. The following week, I decided to open up to my sister, Sarah. She had always been the emotional anchor in our family. We met for coffee at a small cafe, and I could see the concern in her eyes as I began to share my story. She listened patiently, her expression shifting between sympathy and determination. "You deserve to be happy, no matter what that looks like," she said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. "If that means leaving, then you have to be brave enough to do it. I'll be here for you, no matter what." Her unwavering support gave me a renewed sense of strength. I realized that having people around me who cared was invaluable during this trying time. I also decided to confide in a couple of my colleagues. While work had been a source of distraction, I found solace in sharing my situation with those I trusted. During lunch breaks, I slowly began to open up, and I was met with understanding nods and shared stories of their own heartbreaks. It was reassuring to know that I wasn't alone in feeling lost, and it helped diminish the sense of isolation that had crept in. Each conversation brought me new insights. My friends encouraged me to focus on self-care, to explore my interests, and to rediscover the things that made me happy. I started to realize that seeking support wasn't a sign of weakness. It was a necessary part of my healing process. On one particularly difficult night, I called Mark again, feeling overwhelmed by emotions. He suggested we get together for a drink. As we sat in a dimly lit bar, sipping our beers, he reminded me of my worth and the strength I had always exhibited. His encouragement made me reflect on the qualities I admired in myself and how I had lost sight of them during this turbulent period. Through these conversations, I began to understand that I needed to embrace vulnerability and lean on those who genuinely cared about me. They provided a safe space for me to express my feelings without judgment. And for the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. I realized that whatever decision I made, I wouldn't be facing it alone. I had a support system in place, and their love and encouragement would help me navigate this challenging chapter of my life. As I began to reflect on my own needs and desires, I felt a renewed sense of clarity and purpose, one that was rooted in love, loyalty, and the understanding that I deserved happiness too. As I navigated the whirlwind of emotions and sought support from friends and family, something began to shift within me. Each conversation, every moment of shared vulnerability started to chip away at the feelings of inadequacy that had clouded my mind. I began to realize that the pain I was experiencing was not a reflection of my worth, but rather a testament to my capacity to love deeply and fully. Slowly, I started to piece together the fragments of my identity that had become obscured during my marriage. I remembered who I was before Lisa, before our love story became intertwined with doubt and heartbreak. I recalled the passion I had for my hobbies, the dreams I had set aside, and the ambitions that had fueled my spirit. It was as if I had awoken from a long slumber, rediscovering a part of myself that had been hidden away. One evening, while sitting in my favorite armchair, I decided to pick up a book I had long neglected. It was a collection of motivational essays that had inspired me in the past. As I read, I felt a stirring in my chest. The words resonated deeply, reminding me of my resilience and the importance of self-love. I found myself reflecting on the countless challenges I had faced throughout my life, personal setbacks, professional hurdles, and moments of uncertainty. And I realized that I had always emerged stronger. With each page I turned, I began to acknowledge my strength. I was not just a man whose wife had left him. I was a survivor of my circumstances, capable of rebuilding and redefining my life. I remembered the times I had stood up for myself, the moments I had chosen integrity over convenience, and the relationships I had fostered with care. The very act of seeking support had shown me that I was not alone in this journey, and that acknowledgement in itself was empowering. Motivated by this newfound perspective, I began to establish small goals for myself. I started exercising regularly, something I had neglected in the chaos of my emotions. The rush of endorphins was invigorating, and it helped clear my mind. I found solace in nature, going for long walks in the nearby park, where the fresh air and tranquility provided a much-needed escape. With each workout, I felt a sense of accomplishment. I was taking control of my life, reclaiming the power that had once slipped through my fingers. I began to journal, pouring my thoughts onto the pages as a way to process my emotions. It became a cathartic outlet, a safe space where I could express my fears, hopes, and aspirations without reservation. The more I engaged in these activities, the more my self-esteem began to mend. I recognized that I was deserving of love, not just from others, but from myself as well. I started to challenge the negative thoughts that had plagued me since Lisa's departure, replacing them with affirmations of my worth. I am strong, I would remind myself. I am worthy of happiness. I also realized that my worth was not tied to my relationship status. It was rooted in who I was at my core. The belief that I could thrive outside of my marriage began to solidify, and I felt a surge of hope for what lay ahead. I started to envision a future filled with possibilities, one where I could find love again, love that was built on respect and mutual appreciation. The process was gradual, and there were still moments of doubt. However, with every small victory, I grew more confident in my ability to navigate this new chapter of my life. I began to understand that my strength lay not only in my ability to endure pain, but also in my willingness to embrace change and seek joy amidst the uncertainty. As I reflected on this journey of self-discovery, I felt a sense of empowerment wash over me. I was ready to face the decisions ahead, armed with the understanding that I had the strength within me to rise above my circumstances, to create a life filled with love, happiness, and purpose once again. The shadows of my past began to fade, replaced by the light of possibility and the promise of a brighter future. As the days turned into weeks, my journey of self-discovery and healing began to blossom into something unexpected. Life has a way of surprising us when we least expect it. One Saturday morning, I decided to attend a local art fair in town. I had always appreciated art, but this was my first time stepping out into the world as a single man. I wandered through the stalls, admiring the craftsmanship of local artists and allowing myself to feel a sense of joy and curiosity. While perusing a display of handmade pottery, I heard a warm, inviting voice beside me. "That one would look perfect on your dining table." I turned to see a woman with long, wavy hair and a genuine smile that lit up her face. She wore a flowing sundress adorned with bright, floral patterns, and her eyes sparkled with kindness. "Yeah, I think it would," I replied, smiling back. "I'm actually trying to add a little character to my place." We struck up a conversation about our tastes in art and design, and before I knew it, we were laughing and sharing stories like old friends. Her name was Emily, and she had a passion for painting. I was captivated by her enthusiasm and the way she spoke about her craft. As we continued to chat, I felt a spark of connection that I hadn't experienced in a long time. It was refreshing to engage with someone who radiated positivity and warmth. Emily had a way of making me feel at ease, as if all the worries that had burdened me for months were temporarily forgotten. We exchanged contact information, promising to keep in touch, and I left the fair with a lightness in my heart. Over the next few weeks, Emily and I began texting and meeting for coffee. Each encounter felt like a breath of fresh air. I found myself laughing more, sharing my thoughts and experiences with her, and feeling a sense of joy that I thought had been lost forever. Emily's genuine interest in my life and her encouragement of my pursuits helped me continue my journey of self-discovery. She appreciated my growth and understood my past without judgment. One evening, while sitting at a cozy cafe, Emily looked at me with a softness in her eyes. "I know it's been tough for you, but I see so much potential in you," she said, her voice filled with sincerity. "You're stronger than you realize." Her words struck a chord, reinforcing the strength I had started to recognize in myself. As our relationship deepened, I started to open up about my past with Lisa. I shared the pain I had endured, my struggles with self-esteem, and how I was working to rebuild my life. To my relief, Emily listened, without flinching, her compassion evident in her demeanor. She didn't see me as a victim. She saw me as someone who had overcome adversity, and that perspective empowered me even further. I was cautious, of course. The scars from my previous relationship lingered, and I was wary of rushing into anything. But with Emily, there was no pressure, only a shared understanding and mutual respect. We took our time, savoring each moment we spent together. I found myself looking forward to our dates, eager to learn more about her passions, her dreams, and the life she envisioned for herself. With every passing day, I began to realize that I could be open to love again. Emily's kindness and acceptance made me feel worthy of affection and companionship. I had been so consumed by the pain of my past that I had almost forgotten how beautiful love could be when nurtured in a healthy way. One afternoon, while strolling through the park, we paused to admire a group of children playing. I felt a warmth in my chest as I looked at Emily, who was smiling at the scene before us. In that moment, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude, not just for her presence in my life, but for the journey that had brought me to this point. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, I realized that I was beginning to let go of my past. Meeting Emily had opened my heart again, and with her, I felt a flicker of hope for the future. The laughter, the shared moments, and the kindness we showed each other were all building blocks of a new love story, one that was rooted in trust, respect, and a shared understanding of life's challenges. In Emily, I found not just a companion, but a partner who valued love and loyalty above all. As I stood there, hand in hand with her, I felt ready to embrace whatever came next, together. As my relationship with Emily blossomed, I knew that rebuilding trust would be essential, not just for her, but for myself as well. The scars from my previous marriage had left me with deep-rooted fears, and while I felt a genuine connection with Emily, the memories of betrayal still lingered in the back of my mind. It was a constant reminder of the vulnerability that love demands, but I was determined not to let my past dictate my future. In the early stages of our relationship, I found myself often second-guessing my feelings and hesitating to fully open up. I had to remind myself that Emily wasn't Lisa. She wasn't the woman who had shattered my heart. I learned to communicate my fears openly with her. During one of our evening walks, I gathered the courage to express my concerns. "I want you to know that I struggle sometimes with trust," I admitted, my voice steady yet vulnerable. "It's not you, it's just something I'm working through." Emily nodded, her eyes understanding. "I appreciate your honesty," she said softly. "We can take things at your pace. I'm here for you." Her reassurance meant the world to me. It was a small moment, but it created a safe space for me to be vulnerable. With that single conversation, I felt a shift, a renewed sense of hope that this could be different. As weeks turned into months, we focused on building a foundation of trust. Emily's consistency and unwavering support played a crucial role in this process. She showed up for me time and again, whether it was attending family gatherings or simply being there when I needed someone to talk to. Her reliability was a comforting reminder that not all relationships were destined for betrayal. I also committed to being open and transparent with her. Whenever I felt a twinge of doubt or insecurity, I would voice it instead of letting it fester inside. It wasn't easy, but I learned to embrace vulnerability. I realized that trust wasn't just about waiting for the other person to prove themselves. It was about actively participating in the relationship, being honest, and building a connection based on mutual respect. One of our biggest milestones came when we decided to go on a weekend getaway to a cabin in the woods. I had always loved nature, and the idea of disconnecting from our daily routines felt rejuvenating. As we drove along the winding roads, I felt excitement bubbling within me. This trip was more than just a break from our busy lives. It was an opportunity to deepen our bond. Once we arrived, the tranquility of the surroundings washed over us. We spent our days hiking, exploring the area, and sharing laughter around the fireplace at night. I noticed how Emily's presence began to calm the lingering anxiety I had carried. She had a way of making every moment feel special. Whether we were roasting marshmallows or simply gazing at the stars, it was during one of these quiet evenings, wrapped in a blanket together, that I felt a profound sense of peace settle within me. "Can I tell you something?" I asked, breaking the comfortable silence. Emily turned to me, her eyes reflecting the glow of the fire. "I've realized how much I've grown to trust you," I confessed, a smile breaking across my face. "It's strange, but I feel safe with you." Her expression softened, and she reached for my hand, squeezing it gently. "That means so much to me. Trust is built over time, and I'm glad to be on this journey with you." In that moment, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The fear that had lingered for so long started to dissolve, replaced by the realization that happiness was not just possible, it was within reach. With Emily by my side, I could envision a future where love was built on a strong foundation of trust and shared experiences. As our relationship deepened, I began to rediscover what happiness felt like. I found joy in the little things, the way Emily's laughter could brighten even my darkest days, the comfort of our quiet moments together, and the excitement of dreaming about our future. I started to embrace the possibility of love again, not as a source of fear, but as a source of strength and fulfillment. I also began to invest in my own happiness. I pursued my hobbies with renewed passion, from photography to volunteering at the local community center. Each activity filled me with purpose and joy, reminding me that happiness could be found in various aspects of life, not solely through romantic relationships. As I reflected on my journey, I felt immense gratitude for the twists and turns that had led me to this point. My experiences had shaped me, but they did not define me. With Emily's support, I was learning to let go of the past and embrace the present, cherishing each moment we shared. The process of rebuilding trust was ongoing, but with every step forward, I felt more confident in our relationship. I had learned that love is not just about grand gestures, but about the everyday moments we create together. Each laugh shared, each fear faced, and each moment of vulnerability brought us closer, strengthening the bond we were forging. As we settled into our newfound rhythm, I realized that true happiness was not simply about avoiding pain, but about finding joy in the journey. With Emily, I had discovered a love that was grounded in loyalty and understanding, a love that held the promise of a bright future, free from the shadows of my past. I was ready to embrace this happiness, knowing that together we could navigate whatever life had in store for us. As the seasons changed, and I settled into a comfortable rhythm with Emily, moments of reflection began to emerge. I often found myself thinking about the past, not out of sadness, but as a means of understanding how far I had come. The memories of my marriage to Lisa were still vivid, but they no longer held the same power over me. Instead, they served as lessons that guided me toward a brighter future. One evening, while we were cuddled up on the couch, I turned to Emily. "You know, I've been thinking a lot about my past lately," I admitted. "I used to be so consumed by what happened with Lisa, but now it feels like a different lifetime." Emily looked at me. "I think it's important to reflect," she said gently. "Our experiences shape us, but they don't have to define us." Her words resonated deeply within me. I realized that reflecting on my past didn't mean dwelling in it. It meant acknowledging the pain and recognizing the growth that followed. I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts. I used to think love was something that could easily slip away, something fragile. When Lisa left, I questioned my worth and whether I could ever find happiness again. I confessed, my voice tinged with emotion. But being with you has changed that perspective entirely. I've learned that love, when nurtured, can be incredibly resilient. Emily smiled softly, encouraging me to continue. "You've shown me that true love is built on trust and understanding," I said, my heart swelling with gratitude. "It's not about the grand gestures. It's about the little moments we share, the laughter, the support. You've helped me heal in ways I didn't think were possible." Her eyes sparkled with kindness as she leaned in closer. "I'm glad you see that. Healing takes time, but it's also about opening ourselves up to new experiences and relationships." I felt a warmth in my chest as I reflected on our journey together, the countless memories we had created and the trust we had built. As I continued to share my thoughts, I realized I wanted to confront my past in a more tangible way. I decided to reach out to Lisa. It wasn't about seeking closure. It was more about finding peace within myself. I wanted to express that I had moved on, that I had learned from the experience, and emerged stronger. After some thought, I drafted a brief message. It was simple and straightforward. "Hey Lisa, I hope you're doing well. I just wanted to say that I've found happiness again and have learned so much from our time together. I wish you the best." It felt liberating to send that message, as if I was finally closing a chapter that had weighed heavily on my heart for far too long. When I shared my decision with Emily, she encouraged me. "That's a brave step," she said, her eyes filled with support. "It shows how far you've come. You're not just moving on. You're embracing your past and using it to shape your future." As I reflected on this pivotal moment, I felt an overwhelming sense of closure. I had taken control of my narrative. The betrayal and heartache I experienced were no longer chains binding me. They were stepping stones that led me to a deeper understanding of love and loyalty. In the weeks that followed, I continued to focus on the present. I made it a priority to cultivate joy in my life, whether it was through spontaneous adventures with Emily, spending time with friends, or simply enjoying quiet moments at home. Each day was a testament to my growth, a celebration of the love I had found with her. I also began to appreciate the beauty in vulnerability. I had once viewed it as a weakness, something to be guarded against. But now, I understood that vulnerability is what allows us to connect deeply with others. It's in those moments of openness that true intimacy is forged, and I cherish the bond Emily and I shared. Looking back at my journey, I recognized the importance of facing my fears, confronting my past, and embracing the present. Each experience, no matter how painful, had shaped me into the person I was today. I was no longer defined by the betrayal I had suffered. Instead, I was empowered by the lessons I had learned. As I snuggled closer to Emily on the couch that night, I felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over me. I had navigated the storm of heartbreak and emerged on the other side, not just as a survivor, but as someone who understood the true essence of love. "Thank you for being part of my journey," I said softly, looking into her eyes. "You've shown me that happiness is possible again." Emily smiled, her warmth enveloping me like a comforting blanket. "And thank you for trusting me," she replied. "Together, we're building something beautiful." In that moment, I realized that my past would always be a part of my story, but it no longer held the power to dictate my future. With Emily by my side, I was ready to embrace the adventure that lay ahead, one filled with love, trust, and the promise of happiness.